Thank you, Lan. That was very powerful. I just want to reiterate that this is an amazing place. Very special. Starts from the top with Dawn and Lan and Andrews, and it just goes all the way down to you guys. And don't forget how special you are. I know we all enjoy working with you every single day. So let's get into our next session from another incredible group, NIDA Financial Group. And Andrews Brown. We have Tommy Barnes, we have Derek Keeney, and Daniel Keeney. So come on up here for the advisor snapshot.
Thank you all. Oh, hope we're not too close together. So, is that you? We good? Can y'all hear us? No feedback?
Check.
Excellent. Well, hey, by the way, no pressure, but apparently we're saving lives today. So you guys got to make it good. No, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined again, for those of you that haven't had an opportunity to meet the NIDA Financial Group, Tommy Barnes, Derek Keeney, and Daniel Keeney in the middle, and they are in Cartersville, Georgia. And I've gotten to know them over the last 4 years just as part of the advisor development team, but through this process, really got to know these guys, and it is such a great story. And if I put it in the context of, for you, Tommy, and for you, Derek, you both came into this industry, I'll say a little later in life than most.
Yeah.
And the work that you've done, the support and the help that you got from Chuck NIDA, who was NIDA Financial founder, to bridge that gap, to get you all from other careers and other industries into this, the navigating the absolute disruption that you had to go through about halfway through that, coming in and thinking about not only what to manage in the business, but how to do it and why it was important. And now finally bringing in Daniel to the business and bringing in that G2. So if you guys are ready, let's get started. All right, so before we get into the business, let's talk about your backgrounds. Tommy, you want to start us off?
Be glad to. Tommy Barnes, I grew up in Rome, Georgia, about an hour northwest of here. Great place to grow up, small town. When I look back at my childhood, now that I'm as old as I am, I can characterize it by saying we were rich, we just didn't have any money. I was blessed to grow up in a household with mom and dad that taught me and my two brothers Christian core values, and I knew every day when I got home I was going to be protected and encouraged, and they loved us enough to discipline us. My dad was, and I always said that I never had to go any further than the kitchen table to find my hero, because my dad was one of those guys that he could do anything. And, he was always kind of the quiet guy, but he was always the guy that, he could wire a house, or he could plumb, or he could carpenter, or whatever. He could do anything, and I always admired that. As I was growing up and I came out of school, I was always kind of a nerd, so I had a scholarship offer to North Carolina State. And my dad asked me, he said, where are you thinking about going to school? And I said, well, it's either going to be University of Alabama or North Carolina State. And he said, son, there's a scholarship at North Carolina State. Let me help you with this decision. and I had a job in the summers at the paper mill, because this scholarship was through the Pulp and Paper Foundation. Long story short, went to North Carolina State, great 4 years, got a degree in chemical engineering, came out. In the heyday of engineering demand, so I think they had a total of 15 job offers coming out of school. So it was, where do you want to go? My dad once again said, hey, go anywhere you want to, but if you want to come back home, I'll help you build a house like I did your brother. So I came back home, and he and I built my first house. And as we were going through that process, and when I say built it, I mean we cut the trees down, we cut the firewood up, And he said, as in that process, I'd had somebody dig the basement. He said, tomorrow we'll start the footings. I said, great. And I pulled up down there and I thought, I don't see a tractor. And I walked up there and I saw 2 picks and 2 shovels. And I thought, uh-oh. And he said, come on. And so he and I started swinging a pickaxe. And 3 days into that, I said, Dad, I'm going to get the guy at the mill that's a contractor to bring his backhoe over here. I'll never forget what his response was. He turned around and looked at me. Now, he's 30 years older than I am. I'm 24. He's 54. And he turns around and looks at me and says, son, what you have is time. What you do not have is money. So it's not costing a thing for you and I to swing this pick. Stop thinking and get back to work. Words to live by. So that's kind of it. So I was at the paper plant there in Rome for 35 years in various levels of management through my career.
Derek?
Well, thank you, Andrews. Yeah, Derek Keeney. I grew up in East Tennessee, a small town called Clinton, which is outside of Oak Ridge, Tennessee. You all may know it. Land, being the history nerd, you certainly know it. It's where the Manhattan Project was, where they built the bomb parts and stuff. And my folks worked there, and that's what we knew when we were kids, was our nuclear drills were real because we were a target. But my folks divorced when I was pretty young, 11 or 12. And so I kind of grew up in a lower middle class family at that point. Went to work when I was 12, delivering newspapers 7 days a week, and been working ever since, all the way, even during college and high school and all that. Went to college at Georgia Tech, where I had a Navy ROTC scholarship. Had nominations to the military academies, but didn't get appointments. And my Navy scholarship, I lost it after my freshman year because it turns out I was colorblind, and they don't like colorblind people in the military, apparently. So I was also in the co-op program, and that's a program where you work a quarter, go to school a quarter, work a quarter, go to school. Kind of important for when we get into our succession planning and stuff. So I co-opted with IBM here in Atlanta as a programmer and programmed my way through school. And that's how I paid my way as an out-of-state student. Graduated Tech with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. Went to work in manufacturing. Though IBM made me an offer, the manufacturing was more appealing to me, silly me, and got into the grind. Spent 30 years in manufacturing, working for Milliken and Company, Kimberly-Clark, Anheuser-Busch, which is pretty cool. And ultimately retired after those 30 years and got into this business. It's always been a passion. Finance has always been a passion for me, and this is where I ultimately wanted to land, and this is where we are today, and life's experience has brought us here. So, yeah.
Daniel?
Yeah, and you may realize there's a little relation here. This is my father. So I grew up in Cartersville, Georgia, just up the road a little ways. It's where our office is now. Just the whole way, we got taught the value of money. I mean, I remember when I was little, we had a little piggy bank. You give 10% to the church, 50% to the bank, and you pay yourself with 40%. So money was always something that we had a focus on, and if we wanted to go and spend money, we needed to go and make money. So 12 years old, I started refereeing soccer. Start to put money together just to save up for little things. When I was 16, started over at Publix. Worked my way through college at Publix. Great tuition reimbursement program. Was able to graduate debt-free. It was awesome. Went to Kennesaw State University. Can argue I'm the only finance guy out here. Got the 2 engineers here, but during that time is when I met Chuck, actually, and I got to intern when I was senior in college and got to get the finance experience. Worked at Invesco for a few years before making the change.
Great. So Derek, 30 years in manufacturing. How did you become a financial advisor or get interested in this?
Yeah, it's an interesting story, Andrews. As I mentioned, I've always been fascinated with doing. I self-directed my 401k. I'm one of those engineers, so no one in this room likes engineers as clients. I get that, and there's a reason y'all don't like us. And we're geeks, we're nerds, and that's just the way it is. But I was always fascinated with it. In addition, I'm a little bit of a political wonk, and I ran for office because I was frustrated with the way our country was going and what was happening in the world. And in 2013, that's when I met Chuck. I was told he's very influential in our community. He was a person I needed to meet. And so I was meeting with him to take advantage of his contacts, his network, and hopefully get some funds raised. And he was interested in meeting with me because I worked with Anheuser-Busch, and we have really nice pension and 401k plans. So we were mutually using each other. And part of his spiel then was, where do you see yourself in retirement? And I looked him right in the eye and I said, well, when I retire, I'm coming to work for you. And that's what we did. I did retire several years later, and I did come on board with NIDA Financial Group with Tommy and Chuck. And it's been a great experience ever since, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the business.
So, Tommy, how about you?
Similar story. Worked at the paper mill. Like I said, I don't know if you know anything about a paper mill, but they run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I spent a lot of nights and weekends working. And as I progressed up through management with more and more responsibility, it seemed like that phone rang more and more. And finally one day I became frustrated after a particularly long maintenance outage. And I went to see Chuck and I said, hey, he was my financial advisor at the time. And he had just left Peachtree Planning at the time. Anyway, I went to see him and I said, hey, 65 is not happening. I'm thinking sooner, and probably 60. And he said, why don't you retire now and come to work with me? And I laughed and I said, well, don't say that now if you're not serious. And I was the engineer that would come to the meeting with my own spreadsheet, the kind of guy you all hate. And, he said, you come in with your spreadsheets and your analysis and your thoughts. And he said, I need somebody that will focus on the details, because if many of you knew Chuck, he was very much a big picture guy. And he said, I need somebody that can focus on the details. I said, okay, well, what do I have to do? I thought about it for a week. I called him back. I said, what do I have to do? And he laid it out for me, and I started studying at night. And that was in February of 16. And then I took the test, the 7 in July of 16. Came to work with Chuck on January the 1st, 2017.
And Daniel, how about you?
Yeah, so I met Chuck for the first time. Actually, I was in high school. We had a work-based learning job shadow day, and I always knew I kind of wanted to get into finance. So I just looked around, and he was someone that answered the phone call and said that I could spend the day with him. So we got to spend a little time with him there, and then fast forward 4 years down the road. In college, looking for college internships. I'd enjoyed investment classes, knew that in the end that's something I wanted to do. So opportunity arose for me to work for Chuck as an intern. So I got to spend my senior year working with him as an intern. Graduation time frame, we talked a little bit, see if we could start working together. Timing didn't work out quite correctly, but an opportunity arose over at Invesco, actually. So worked as an intern at Invesco, covering the Washington, D.C. area for about 3 years. Had a great time over there, great experience. And just timing kind of worked out for me to be able to come back over to NIDA Financial Group. They needed a little bit of help. It's time for me to make a decision with my career pathing, and it all kind of lined up.
Great. So, Daniel, you can sit back for a little while, because the next couple minutes are going to be more about Derek and Tommy, but you're batting cleanup, so don't go anywhere. Tommy, what was it like as a career changer, or what Derek says an encore career coming into this? What was it like?
It was there was a lot of apprehension. Working for a Fortune 500 company all my life, there were a lot of hours, but there was also a really nice salary, a nice bonus, stock options, and a pension. And so I had considered doing it years before, but didn't feel like I could do it. And when this opportunity presented itself, began thinking about it, and the more my wife and I prayed about it, the more we said, yeah, this is the right thing. Now's the time. If you're ever going to do it, and my wife's words, don't be 65 years old wondering, should you have done it? Do it. And so I did. I did not know, you don't know what you don't know. And didn't realize how long it would take for revenue to start. I did not realize how long it would take to build my own book. And I did not realize, honestly, how intimately you get to know your clients. You get to know folks on such a personal level because you're dealing with their money. And so it was a lot of apprehension, but it was also really rewarding. I remember the first week, I came home, my wife said, "How was your first week?" I said, "It's great. We started the week with prayer, and no one cursed at me all week long." I didn't have either of those at the paper mill, so it was, it was a great experience. But 5 months in, I still wasn't making any money, and I approached Chuck about it, and he was such a good mentor, and he said, stick with me because you're doing the details that are allowing me to do what I do. And he said, we'll work out the compensation. I said, well, right now when I look at my commission statement, there's a big negative number because there's all these fees from LPL. Chuck wasn't even part of IFG yet at that time. So, that was.
Derek?
So it's similar. Tommy and I both grew up in manufacturing. And man, I got to tell you, manufacturing, especially if you're in manufacturing leadership, it's a different world. It's you get called back to the plant from vacation. When the phone rings in the middle of the night, you don't know if it's going to lead to you getting fired the next day because of something that happened outside of your span of control, but under your area of responsibility. It's a grind. So leaving that environment, that's when you got a wife and kids and a family, you've got to perform, and even if you don't perform, those that work for you have to, or you're in trouble. So that was a big deal. That's a high-stress environment. When you talk work-life balance, if you're a manufacturing leader, that's for someone else. It's not for you. You're not allowed to have a work-life balance. You're allowed to have a work balance. So transitioning from there to this was a blessing. It was great to come to an area where you can serve and you can pour into the lives of others and make a difference for them. So the whole transition was great. It's just a whole new experience, enjoying what you're doing, being able to pour into it and have it pour into you. I would tell you, making the transition was a thoughtful process for me. I was able to take paid penalties on it, but I was able, our pension plan at Danhauser had been frozen. I was ultimately able to take early distributions from it. So I used that to span the gap before I could start making revenue. Chuck didn't share with me how long the dry spell would be. Tommy did after I'd already started. But that's what allowed us to span that gap. And for those of you, especially the newer folks that we've been talking about and the younger folks, longevity is what's going to lead to prosperity in this business, I would suggest. You do the work, you do the everything, but it takes a while to get you going. But once you're going, man, it's a great business. And so the transition was good. We were able to bring a lot of manufacturing, though I've dissed it a little bit, it does some great stuff too. It's always about performance improvement. It's always about getting better. It's always about metrics. And ultimately, for us in this business, it's always about shareholder returns, which comes from earnings per share, right? So we're always working in that direction. We've got tools and methods and processes and stuff that lead to that. And all these tools and methods and processes are transferable to our industry. It's just they have to be tweaked and adjusted, but they're transferable. So that, when Tommy's talking about us bringing what we learned to the NIDA Financial Group, that's what we brought, were those processes and systems. And so it was good for me then, when I joined NIDA, to be able to see where we could fit in as part of the puzzle. and to start being a contributor, even though we were not revenue generators. It was contributing to the organization immediately. So it's cool.
So where is, Derek, I'll stay with you. Where is NIDA today from AUM and employee and clients?
Oh, wow. Okay, so AUM, I guess advisory AUM, we're about 181 million. We're up pretty good. Over 200 total if you include our direct business and stuff. And it's interesting when Tommy started before I did, but basically it was the same percentage. When we started, it was a tremendous amount of annuities and direct business and very little advisory. And that's the first thing we saw, was that we need to get into the recurring revenue. And that recurring revenue for us has improved a tremendous amount from when we first started. We serve over 700 clients, and that's individual clients. If you look at households, it's probably in the 550 or so. And what was the
Just number of employees.
number of employees? Yeah, and that's with
Your
5
team.
employees. We've got 3 advisors, office manager, and then 2 part-time or interns right now. So it keeps us busy. We've got a good distribution across our book, and it's cool. It's a cool place to be.
Tommy, what was it like when you first started? What was NIDA Financial like?
When I first started with Chuck came from Peachtree Planning, if any of you are familiar with Peachtree Planning. Primarily annuities and insurance. And I think on my first day there, I looked at everything, and we had $1 million in advisory assets. And we had about 20 to 25 million in direct business and annuities. And after 3 or 4 months, I went to Chuck and I said, because my whole thing was annuities and insurance are fine, but that's not what I signed up for. I mean, I do that when a client needs it, but I was more into the recurring revenue, the advisory assets. And I told him, I said, there's just not enough here. And at that, like I said before, he was willing. He was very adaptable. I'll say that about Chuck. He was very adaptable. And we began. He said, "Look, you free me up to do a lot of the sales, because at heart, Chuck was a sales guy." Yeah, yeah. And he said, "You free me up. We'll do a split. All new business coming in, we'll do a 80-20 split, and I'll give you, 20% of everything that comes in." And so we began to, and thankfully about that time too, I started to develop my own book of business, because a lot of folks that I had worked with through the year began to come through the door. So.
Derek, you joined a few years later, and what does that do to the business?
Well, it lowered the average age a little bit. But I joined and
I almost said IQ too, but I didn't.
Well, there is that. The book, I don't remember exactly where the book was when I joined. It was not a tremendous amount improved. One thing that did happen from the time Tommy joined and the time I joined was that NIDA Financial acquired another book of business there in Cartersville. And it was a new experience for Tommy. It was a great thing for Chuck, because he was all about meeting more new people. And as they worked on the integration of that book, there were a crap ton of illiquid REITs and BDCs. And you all know where that went shortly thereafter. So it increased the AUM on the book, but it really didn't do anything for stinking revenue, because there wasn't anything there. The book was still pretty substantial, non-advisory, and we introduced key performance indicators. Tommy and I did. We actually was at an Invesco conference. I learned about some key things that the higher producing wealth firms across the country, some metrics they being Invesco, that they looked at with them. I said, we can pull those things together and monitor those guys for ourselves. And it was based on revenue on assets, ROA, percent recurring, AUM per advisor and clients per advisor and all that jazz. Pretty cool stuff to pull together. So we started making those our key performance indicators. We started looking at those bad boys monthly. We're bringing in, from Tommy and I, one of the cool things about us coming out of the manufacturing business is that we had a large network of folks that both International Paper and Anheuser, again, substantial 401ks and pensions. Every client walks in the door is going to be $1 million plus. And we had good reputations there, so we brought in a lot of good revenue that way. We started looking at our metrics, and we just started looking at performance and growing the business.
So Chuck starts it. Tommy, you join. Derek, you join. I think you all shared something with me about adding a whole bunch of split IDs.
Yeah.
So, Derek, once you're fully on board, how many splits do you have at NIDA?
Oh, man, we got ourselves, I think we were up to a whopping 26 or so at one point. We had splits to beat the band, because I guess that's been the compensation model forever in the industry, is looking at splits. And Chuck was a sales guy, like you said, Tommy, but he also had the vision that NIDA Financial Group was going to be a team of advisors instead of individual silos underneath a roof. So we shared everything, all clients we served, we did everything as a team. That resulted in proliferation of splits because that was the compensation model. So we had a tremendous number. We've rationalized that down. We'll talk about that maybe later, but we rationalized that down to a more manageable number. We can still glean it a little bit, but because we changed the way we compensate and changed the way we participate in how the business grows. But yeah, we got up to 26 at one time.
Tommy, what happened in August of 2021?
August 10th of 2021, Chuck Nida passed away from COVID. Chuck had been to Alaska on a fishing trip. He contracted COVID and was sick for about 6 weeks before he passed away. So tough time for us, really tough time, because before Chuck Nida was my business partner, he was my friend. And I'd been a friend for a long, long time. We'd only been business partners for 4 years. But yeah, it was tough. That was a tough time.
What did that mean for your business?
Well, thankfully we had a business continuity agreement in place, so there wasn't really any issue there. We began to execute that. Derek and I began to, because a lot of those clients that we had were legacy clients of Chuck's, and Derek and I may have known them, may not have. We had a large number of folks that we had actually never met. And so we began having those meetings with them and going through that. I'll say this, if it hadn't been for Don and Land, yourself, I'm not sure we would have survived that, because it was a lot of apprehension. There was a lot of what ifs. We needed a lot of support. And I'm thankful for you guys for giving that support to us. And we began to navigate taking on, this was supposed to be, whether you call it an encore career or a retirement job, as I tell folks, my perfect retirement job got really imperfect on August the 10th of 21.
So Derek, from that perspective, you're meeting with clients you may or may not have actually met. You probably saw their names in the business. What was that experience like?
Yeah, those client meetings were, they were difficult. Number one, we'd lost our friend, and we hadn't had the chance to mourn because, all during that time, as many of you realize, we were in probably the worst market we've all ever experienced. Bonds weren't doing anything, equities weren't doing anything. The market was just killing us. And so the tone of the meeting not only was an introduction to the client and trying to get to know him was, Chuck used to look at things and take care of us, and all of a sudden we're down, and it's you guys. And trying to manage that gently. And we had long client meetings and long days, and it was a struggle. But we kept, retention was high. We kept our clients. The way we met with them and the way we discussed with them, we earned their confidence and trust. And we bounced back, and we're finally getting our head, after adding Daniel. We were still struggling until Daniel came aboard, just keeping up with review meetings and keeping up with performance. And then, of course, the geeks, we bring our processes and systems in, and oh, by the way, those take time. Our time became our commodity, and there wasn't enough. And finally getting Daniel on board brought us some bandwidth that we're able to focus on other things and the type of business structure we want to get in place and making some other stuff happen. But those client meetings and getting to know the initial reviews during a performance downturn, after all of us losing Chuck Knight was just an amazing person. Everybody loved him. You couldn't not love Chuck. And those were stressful times, yeah.
But from a business owner perspective, it was also a cathartic moment, right? You used the term overwhelmed, yeah, Tommy, but it set you all on a particular path. What was that?
So we were overwhelmed. Overwhelmed in a lot of ways because, like Derek said, we didn't even have time to mourn. And at the same time, we were still blessed to have the business from the 2 plants we used to work in. We had a lot of folks coming in, a lot of new business. So we were overwhelmed. You got a lot of new business. We're trying to put these systems and structures in place and meet with Chuck's clients. And it was complicated. You know, all these splits, and man, it was just so complicated. And I told Derek one night, I said, we've made this far. I mean, imagine that, engineers, and we made something complicated. I said, this complicatedness is consuming too much of our time. We've got to simplify this.
So how'd you simplify it?
You want to take that?
Well, I mean, you know, you can either stop and sharpen the blade, or you can be too busy cutting down trees to take the time to do it. So we just had to carve out our time. The biggest kicker to simplification was we added an intern as part of our program. My experience as a co-op student was that was a way to contribute and benefit. So we added an intern. We brought Tommy's daughter Liz on to help us out. And then we started talking to Daniel about what his transition from Invesco to NIDA might look like, and if he were interested. At the same time, we had started getting in a little bit of a groove with how we're introverts. How do you think we do with client meetings if we don't have man, talk about awkward. We finally started getting in a groove there. So we were able to manage how many meetings we have, how to do our client notes and follow-ups, and then how to get our trading done. You know, along this way, and Bryce, you're not going to like it, but along this way, we do everything ourselves. We all did custom portfolios for every single client. We're finally starting to transition some into models now. And then we kept up with tracking and monitoring on performance of each individual investment. We had over 500 tickers at one point. So in addition to all this client proliferation, we had ticker proliferation. We just had all kinds of stuff going on. So we just started saying, hey, we got to start separating the wheat from the chaff, getting our tools to work for us, and then adding good resource that can help us with optimizing our time. KT Gallo with Invesco was famous for helping us with that. It's the highest and best use of your time, and we had to get our time where we were using the highest and best use and taking advantage of other resources. So.
I'll add this too. When you're overwhelmed like that, you tend to go back and rely on what your strengths are. And having both come out of manufacturing, our strengths centered around, okay, we got to put these metrics in place. You will not improve what you don't measure. And so let's figure out what's important to us. Let's focus on that. And let's, I won't bore you with all the Deming and the Six Sigma and all that stuff. But we kind of resorted to what we had resorted to in the past. And we uncomplicated things. We went to basically one rep ID because to get away from all that stuff. And we went to a different way of doing things. And we did review these key, we call them KPIs, key performance indicators. We began to review those on a monthly basis. Okay, are we moving the needle the right way? And if not, why not? And what's that telling us? And a lot of the minutia, we said, you know, we'll farm that out to the intern, or we'll farm that out to, brought my daughter on. Let Liz can handle, and it, like Derek said, we focused on highest and best use of your time. Because I'll be honest with you, 3 or 4 months after Chuck passed away, I thought, heck, if I'm going to be this stressed, I might as well stay at the paper mill. And, you know, but we did walk out one night, and Derek made a statement to me that I will always remember. We had had a tough day. We had to move offices. That's another thing that went on during that time. We moved offices, and we were leaving on a Friday night, about 10 o'clock, and the office we had just moved looked like a bomb had gone off in it. And we were coming back Saturday morning to get everything put together. And as we walked to the truck, he looked at me and said, "It's still better than working at plant, isn't it?" I said, "It sure is." Mm-hmm. It sure is.
I want to pivot to your intern program. So Daniel, as the first intern, what was that experience like?
Yeah, so that first experience was interesting. I later learned that Tommy actually had no idea that they were getting an intern that Monday. So I got to interview with Chuck, and just he was excited to have just young blood come in and just see how things work. And really, I kind of get there the first day, do the onboarding stuff, and there's not a huge plan for what I need to do day to day. So a lot of it early on was kind of self-starterish. We did Riskalyze was relatively new to us at the time, so got deep into Riskalyze, looking at client portfolios, starting to help get ready for meeting prep, that kind of stuff. But a lot of just, I had to kind of find projects. At one point, I found old toner and sold it back to a toner company. So it was all over the place, but it was a great way to get started.
So I'll say very unstructured to start.
Could be a little chaotic.
Okay, so let's flash forward. You first intern, now you're back and you're an employee. What does your internship program look like now?
A little more structure now. Not doing too many toner exercises anymore, but so I came back on in 2023. That's when I got started with United Financial Group, and like they mentioned, just absolutely overwhelmed. I came on about a month in. I was already overwhelmed, but we had some processes that we identified that we don't necessarily need to do. We can have an intern kind of pick up the slack and just have them, highest and best use of time again, have them do these projects for us. So we identified we wanted to restart the intern program. At that point, I was the first intern. There was a second intern when I wasn't there, and a third intern when I wasn't there. We had a pretty good hit rate across all of those. But we started that intern program back up for 2024. Went out, Handshake, if y'all are ever looking to do intern programs at college interns, Handshake's what you need to use. You apply, you get onboarded at a school, and we looked at Kennesaw State University, which is about 45 minutes north of Cartersville, where our office is, and University of Georgia. And we got a ton of applicants, did some interviews, and then identified candidates, and had a great experience from it.
So tell me about your interview process.
Sure. So, interview process, I thought a lot about behavioral finance in college. You've got recency bias, so I wanted to make sure I had a scoring track for every interview I did. So, first taking a look at the resumes. I mean, these are college kids. For being honest, it's probably not too deep of a resume. And then second, just the interview, the cadence. Can they hold a conversation? Is this someone that I think would be able to talk to a client? And then third, if they've got some investment experience or if they seem deeply interested in it, that's a little bit of a bonus point. And just scoring the candidates based off how the interviews went, how everything looked, and narrowed it down to the final two and passed those along for the partner interview. Didn't give any information about them outside of these are the top two I've got, and we went from there.
Tommy, you made a comment about both for employees but also for interns. about?
Yeah, when we started looking at them, because, I'll be honest with you, I was involved with a lot of hiring and unfortunately firing decisions when I was in manufacturing. And you learn, if doing that a lot, is some people can just interview well. They may not perform well when they get there, but they can do a darn good interview. And so we learned that it's more important to make sure the person you're talking to is a cultural fit with your organization. And if they're a cultural fit, and if they're a college student and have demonstrated a willingness to learn, as long as they're a cultural fit, we can teach them everything else they need to know. And we can help them. But if they don't fit with you culturally, there's going to be friction there that's going to interfere with all the other stuff that goes on. So we look for the cultural fit first and knowledge, skills, and abilities second.
In 20 seconds, Daniel, one thing you would want any G2 in the audience to know from your experience about what worked, maybe what didn't work, what could have been better?
For bringing in interns or just?
Yep. Or G2 for bringing in.
Yeah, sure. So, I think everything went very well. I think something I started leaning on a little later than I should have is the brain trust. I mean, there's so many great resources here. I found there's a lot of people that have gone through somewhat similar transitions as I've gone through, just reaching out and having conversations. And if you don't know who to reach out to, I've reached out to Andrews, I've reached out to Hayes over there to point me in a direction of a colleague, and I've thought that was extremely useful.
All right, we have less than 5 minutes left. I want to make sure we cover any questions from the audience. Laura and Hayes both have microphones. So if you have a question, please raise your hand right in the front. Micah. And there's also a microphone in the back middle.
Could you give us a list of some of the tasks that you assigned to the interns?
Sure, yeah. So right off the bat, I made it clear in the interviews, and I've continued to make it clear throughout, and all of us have, that we want this to be something that could potentially turn into a job, but if not, we want it to be something where you will not have a difficult time getting hired upon graduation, whether it's asset management. So Riskalyze is where we got started. We do some in-house tracking and monitoring, a lot of our Excel spreadsheet stuff, meeting preparation, preparing presentations. The big thing where we've found a huge value add actually is planning and Right Capital. Right Capital has got a lot going on in it. Do we need to all spend 10 hours training to do that, or can we put an intern on it? He tells us what they need. He has done a fantastic job at it. So just finding a driven individual and letting them go. It's worked a lot. It's worked very well.
Got one more? So the question is, how did you all go from 26 to 1 rep code?
Not quite there yet. We're down to about 5 or 6, depends on which way you look at it. We can get to 1. Actually, it'd have to be 2 because you got the brokerage side also. But the way we're going to continue to glean it down and work in that direction is we're going to take our advisor compensation and tweak our staff too. Our advisor compensation to base, to a salary, with a bonus either quarterly or annually, or quarterly with an annual true-up. We're looking at it with bonus based on, and right now we're spitballing the bonus, but we think it's going to be on AUM growth that they're bringing in or that they're responsible for. So compensation is going to be based on a guaranteed base, and then it's some incentive on top of that. So because we're all incented, right? So we got to have incentive for them too. And then it's all going to be salary. What that allows, just so you understand the way the structure of our firm is, Tommy and I come from a background where you're all about succession planning and setting the entity up for success, whether you're there or not, or for your successor to come in. We want not a financial group to be a forever firm. So we're setting those structures in place so that it doesn't matter, they're not your clients, my clients, they're not a financial group's clients, and you're serving them. It's almost, I guess, like a wirehouse, I don't know. But So the servicing advisor is going to be compensated base. And then what that leads to is even the partners right now, we draw a salary and then we get distributions, which are really nice. And that's going to continue. And so we're on salary. Daniel's he's on a split with a guarantee, and we're wanting to transition that to where it's salary plus a performance incentive, and that's where we're going, and that'll allow us to get to one. It'll be whoever the one person is, that's the CEO, and bada bing, bada boom, you got it. Should be pretty cool.
Daniel?
You said you identified in bringing on a new person that the most important thing was the cultural fit. Can you define that, or what does the cultural fit mean to NIDA Financial Group?
To us, it means core values, looking at their core values, and it is, what is it that you find, what is most important to you? And so it's a lot of questions around, who the person is as opposed to what the technical skills are. I mean, we can assess technical skills pretty quick, but it's more questions around who the person is and what's important to them. And so we have a list of questions that we ask that, kind of get at that. I think one of the things that has made this successful for us is the fact that Derek and I share the same core values, and we value the same things. And, one part of that is, and I'll just say this, we talked about it in my mastermind group today, which my mastermind group does a great job, and I'm thankful for them. But if you take care of the client, of course, you'll be taken care of. And so it's not, we're looking for somebody that is not in it, how much money can I make, what can I do, how do I seize a dollar today, but we're looking at it from a standpoint of do the right thing for the client. We're doing this long term.
Well, gentlemen, unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you very much for spending the 2025 Retreat Advisor Snapshot with us. Thank you.
Such a great group. That was a powerful story. I've enjoyed working with you guys. Thank you so much. Thanks, Andrews. All right. So we now have a 30-minute break. But before we do that, a couple of things. Let's see here. Make sure you're keeping an eye on the time. 30 minutes. We've got speed networking after this. Make sure you're going out there to the sponsors tables. You're learning something. You're mingling. Do look at everyone's lanyards. We did something a little different this year. We changed up the colors to mean something. So yellow, if you see someone with yellow lanyard, new advisors. Make sure you talk to them, get to know them, hear their story, make some kind of contact with them. The gray lanyards are current advisors, tan are the sponsors, teal would be the IFG executive team. You know us all. So make sure that you, again, pay attention to the time, 30 minutes. When the bell rings, make sure you are in your seat for the speed networking. Just a reminder, you guys stay in your seat. The sponsors will move around. Be engaged, ask questions, learn something. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our sponsors. They take the time and the money to come here and put this on and help us learn. So please, be engaged and learn something. So get out there, have some fun, learn something new.